Hello folks and welcome to our game. Myself, Shane Stapleton, joined as ever by Michael Verney. We're reflecting on a massive weekend in the GAA. Offaly came up a little bit short against the brilliant Cork team in Thurles. The Clare men, they're the minor champions, and there was a huge amount of action in the football. We're going to be doing a football power rankings. We haven't gone there just yet this year, but I think it's about time we did now that things are starting to hot up and we're getting into the final stages of the group parts of it. Also, Tailteann Cup is on as well. But a couple of things to start off with. Davy Nelson, he stepped down as manager of the All-Ireland champions Meath after just 8 months in charge. Now, there's not too many details going on there. But, even though a few players have left and all that, they still have an unbelievable panel. They're back-to-back All-Ireland champions. So it's a fair old shock to see that happen mid-season.
Yeah, well, Vicky Wall is back. They're not missing that many players. They have most of their big players for to try and do 3 in a row. I don't exactly know what's after happening and whether Mark Brennan, who was involved with the previous regime, is going to stay on. I'm not so sure. Will Eamon Murray come back? Maybe, potentially. You're coming in mid-season, but maybe he's drawn a line in the sand in that. But sketchy enough details at the moment. It'll be very, very interesting to see who takes them over. This could be a bit like Babs leaving Offaly in '98. Someone coming in, get maybe a bit of a pep back in their step. They're still definitely good enough to win the All-Ireland, obviously.
Yeah, Grode 9 here says stream started working late, Shane. Well, that's because we started doing the show here for 5 minutes and I didn't realise that I hadn't started the stream. So this is the problem now when you're trying to live produce something and also be bob on in it at the same time. You're going to have the odd mistake. Michael isn't a daddy yet, so says Shane Brophy. You're still hanging on there?
No, not yet. No, I'm still here. You won't be getting rid of me for another while yet. Well, maybe it could be gone by the season. Who knows? Yeah. But I won't be. I was glad we had our horse running last Thursday, and I was hoping the baby wouldn't come before then, and it didn't. We had the match yesterday, and I was hoping the baby wouldn't come before then, and it didn't. So any time over the next while now is perfectly fine with me.
Yeah, and I'm going to bring it up on screen here, actually. I forgot to load it already. But, yeah, that horse of yours got the job done last Friday again. Geez, you must be making a mint out of it, are you? Are you going to start sharing it with me?
I don't know if I'm making a mint, but geez, with some crack. Obviously, the great Matt Connor, the original Matt Connor down front, and then the equine version at the back. With some crack, yeah. There was a fair bit of noise. He streaked clear in the final furlong, and I absolutely lost the run of myself completely. And I ended up leading in the horse after, which was a deadly buzz. And we were up drinking champagne in the owners and trainers lounge as well. I wasn't drinking it, but I was taking it all in. It was it was deadly. I thought it might be a good omen. The horse name was Matt Connor, obviously. I thought it might be a good omen for what was to come at the weekend, but unfortunately not. We were just overmatched and overpowered, you'd have to say, against Cork. And
the money you're winning for that horse there, you can surely patch up those jeans, get the price of an old patch for the knee on those jeans.
Are you telling me you've never worn a pair of jeans that had a bit of a hole in them?
Believe it or not, no. Well, obviously, the arse has fallen out. Plenty of the old gusset, scratching out the gusset, has destroyed a few pairs of jeans. But I've never bought a pair of jeans that has holes in it.
Yeah, they actually didn't have a hole in it until I put my foot out it. So now it was kind of stitched up, and then I put my foot out one day. So there's a nice big hole in it now.
So you can now afford a new pair of jeans.
I actually quite like them. They're a nice snug fit, figure hugging fit. But that was a brilliant occasion, and even just leading into, we haven't talked about the atmosphere in Thurles yesterday. I've never seen anything like it for an underage game. When Offaly came out, I know you had some footage up on our game. The noise was deafening when they were reading out the Offaly team. I was chatting to my mother last night. She couldn't even hear what names were being read out. The noise was so loud. 15 seconds after the final whistle, Cork have won the All-Ireland 3 in 4 years, and all you can hear is our Offaly chants going around Temple Stadium. It was bizarre, really. We're a very unique county, a very unique bunch of people, I'd have to say.
Yeah, you're a bunch of stone apes. No, joking aside, it was a brilliant occasion. 29,000, was it 380 people at Temple Stadium. Obviously, the Clare Galway minor final is part of that too. But we'll just start off with the under-20 final. Cork 222, Offaly 313. There's no doubt that the game was decided either side of half-time when the Rebels went on a blitz of 111 to a point. And look, let's call a spade a spade. Offaly were physically beaten up. And, I see some people kind of joking saying that Offaly put out the minor team and Cork put out the under-20 team. And, what did you expect? That when Cork go out there, they're going to see, okay, these Offaly lads are much smaller. let's just rough them up a small bit. And look, you've called out Cork before for lacking the manliness, but by God, they fairly decided we're going to show Offaly what being a man is all about.
Well, they're 20. It was a lot of 20-year-olds against probably a lot of 17 or 18-year-olds.
Well, sure, no one forced you to pick 17-year-olds.
You're going down probably the wrong road maybe this morning. In that respect,
Beauty's in the eye of the beholder. Have you no 19-year-olds to throw out?
There was a few 19-year-olds. There was a few 20-year-olds playing as well. There was only 6 of last year's minor team. There's just probably, I would say, even looking at Cork coming out, a completely different physical prospect. Like, I was even looking at, there was a number 17 coming off the pitch. I was just thinking, this lad's only about 5'7", 5'8", but he's all there. Like, he's all there. All kind of little tanks. That's our lads probably just aren't at the stage of their physical development at the moment. It's not to say that they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, because they know they are, but they're just not there. Like if you put Screeney beside Ben O'Connor, like he'd eat him physically. That's not to say that, like, Screeney had his hands on everything good that Offaly did in the first half. I think he did new marker by the 12th minute even, but Cork probably did kind of rough up Offaly to some respect. They used roughing up is one way of putting it. If you have a physical advantage over the opposition, you try and use it, and they definitely did. And I'd say a lot of those big physical hits took their toll definitely as the second half went on. Like, you and me both saw Screeney before half time. He looked kind of a bit better. He was down his hunkers for a couple of minutes. That's probably the physicality probably taking its toll. Obviously, we'll probably chat about Cormac Egan in a minute. He had to go off at half time with, I think Leo O'Connor said, suspected broken ribs. But just on the game itself, like, there's no doubt that Cork were the better team. They definitely were. And, I feared before halftime, I was kind of praying for halftime to come. And I thought, get 15 minutes in, maybe regroup a small bit. But I think Cork had gotten 5 of the last 6 points before halftime. And then it was just 9 seconds into the second half. Mullins goes down through the middle. And then they get the next 6 points, and the game is kind of done. But it could have gotten really, really ugly at that stage, been 11 down. That could have been a 15 or 16 point beating, and it wasn't. And I credit to our lads for that. It ended up at 6 points. 6 points was probably not a fair reflection of the game in one instance, which is good from an Offaly point of view, and definitely good for the future, because if you'd taken a bit of a pace in there, it would have been particularly demoralising. But I think they went out in their shield, even though, as I said, they were totally overmatched physically, I'd have to say.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I'm just going to go through a couple of comments here. Patrick Coleman says, hard luck to Offaly. Cork were just that bit bigger and stronger than Offaly. Cork were just better able to take their points in the second half. Richard Good says, Verney, you got outmanned by Cork. # karma, # steal. Does Offaly / Verney think hurling should be a non-contact sport? So basically, you've been slating Cork for years about not being men. They couldn't win a Winter All-Ireland.
The Cork senior team, I add.
Yeah, you've been slating them for years, and they fairly gave you a direct answer with that performance.
Well, the Cork under-20s gave an answer to. Well, I don't know.
Maybe it was a message to you, considering everything you've had to say about Cork over the years.
I highly doubt they were thinking about me.
Teams will use anything.
But you'd have to say that for maybe questioning their spine in recent years, like, they were just not letting Offaly through. Like, Cormac Egan was taken out, Screeney was taken out after 2 minutes, Dan Burke was pulled down by Owen Downey in the second half as well. For a county that's probably been claimed not to be cynical enough, they probably went a small bit to the other side yesterday, but they got the job done. Like, I heard someone made a comment that, if Micheál Mullins had done the same going through the Cork defence, then he would have been unceremoniously taken down, and he probably would have been. So, in response to Ben O'Connor's comment that Offaly would have done the same thing if they could, I'm not sure if they would have had, because they didn't.
They should.
Yeah, they probably should have. Now that brings us to another debate about, like, it's one thing, saying, cynical tactics or whatever, and I take my Offaly hat off here. To me, that was a blatant red card for a head high tackle on Cormac Egan that probably left him not really been able to feature for the rest of the game. And as well as that, I'm not picking out players. I don't want to pick out players or have a go at players. But the same player was involved with the incident with Adam Screeney at the start, where he took him out as well. There's no point saying any different. And that was the yellow card. So if that was the yellow card there, And even if it wasn't a red for the tackle on Egan, that's a red card and a player's gone off. And I'm not saying that it would have changed the game, but well, it would have changed the game in some respects. But like Cork were still the better team. But if they had to play with 14 men for 48 minutes, as I feel they should have had, and I don't think I'm the only one that thinks that. I'd say you probably feel that as well. But like that's just to me, I think there's a duty of care to from referees as well to protect players, and some Offaly players were getting killed illegally yesterday. And
so
it's one.
He's wrong now, the referee.
Well, he's wrong not to send off
the
Cork full back.
Like I think the Shane Kingston one, and look, it's difficult because you're talking about young lads here, and like they're all putting their heart and their soul on the line and all that kind of stuff. But look, it's harsh, but he should have got a red card. I've no doubt about that. Also, when Screeney was going through to feed the ball to Egan in that incident, Owen Downey whipped across him, and because I suppose what went on then with dealing with Kingston, Downey was nearly forgotten about. He should have got a yellow card for whipping across. And then later on, rugby tackled, was it Dan Burke on the ground?
Yeah, so he should have been. You know what I mean? I just think I think there was a couple of incidents there that weren't dealt with in time. Like to me, that foul on Screeney, as I said, should have been a yellow, and that would have led to another yellow. And I'm not. This is not, and it's not sour grapes or anything like that. It's just there were a couple of pretty bad tackles that I felt were dealt with quite leniently, but that's just. And listen, Leo O'Connor probably felt the same with the comments that he made after, which he described as absolutely cynical hurling, and he was mainly just talking about some of the incidents in the first half. And listen, like some people would say it's sour grapes or whatever. Like he is skin in the game. He wants his team to win. Like I prefer for him to say that than to say nothing. And just, you know what I mean? And he kept going back and saying Cork were the better team, and I can't emphasize enough that Cork were the better team. But there were a few incidents that we weren't happy with. And I think he was speaking for most Offaly people and probably most of the squad as well with what he brought up.
Jimmer White says, for 20 years, Cork have been putting screenies on the field because we believed the object was the ball. However, in the modern game, the object is the man. The ball is secondary. Hurling's loss, I presume he's saying. Which is kind of interesting. Like, is this a sea change for Cork? Because we keep talking about it, that they didn't... Have they finally learned to become men in Cork? Is the coaching directed towards being men first and hurlers second? Like, because the senior team, there seems to be a bit of a sea change with them, a little bit. I mean, obviously they didn't get out.
It'll take time too, like obviously, yeah.
And I mean, not all of these players are going to come through straight away. But do we feel now that there's a sea change within Cork? 3 under-20s in the last 4 years as well. They're going to have a huge pick now. And one of the things would be, they're going to have a huge pick of the same type of players. So just because they've got lots of them, it doesn't necessarily mean that they've got stars everywhere. Losing Ben O'Connor is obviously a big one as well, because he is someone that you could see physically stepping up straight away, probably even this past year if he wasn't playing so much rugby. But are we looking at a sea change with the sort of hurling that Cork are going to play?
Yeah, well, I'd say on the evidence of what we saw yesterday, like usually teams are a reflection of their coaches or a reflection of their manager. You and I have both spoken to Ben O'Connor, where he's fairly forthright in how he thinks hurling should be played. And
that's great, isn't he?
Yeah, like he tells it as he sees it, and he wants it hard, physical, and manly. And his team definitely play with a robust style, you'd have to say. The seniors, we definitely saw evidence this year that there's definitely something brewing, I would say, in time as well. Just a comment there that I want to read out here. Catnap says, Cork senior team have been getting killed illegally for years, and Bernie calls the seniors soft. Now, like, I'm talking about, a lack of tackling in the forward line for years, which a lot of people would see. I'm talking about teams racing down through the middle of their defence and not getting, no one laying a glove on them. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not saying every player that goes out or anything like that is soft, far from it. But they've played in that sort of a manner. The way the 20s played yesterday would suggest that things are probably changing in Cork and that they realise maybe that they need to play a little bit differently.
Darla Han says, but if it was the Offaly fellas hitting like that, you'd be full of praise. Come here, let's talk.
I wouldn't be full of praise for a load of cynical things. And once that tackle was put in on Egan, I'd be thinking we're going to be playing with 14. And that we're living really on the edge. And I just think a couple of those incidences weren't dealt with as they should have been and had a little bit of a knock-on effect later in the game, like the Downey one and like the Kingston one. But I'm the same as you. I don't like to see lads been sent off or given the line or whatever. But if you do the crime, then you have to take the punishment that befits that.
It's a great Cork team, though. Like, I mean, let's if we just leave that aside, William Buckley, like some of the scores he had, and like I remember, I think just after Ben Cunningham got the goal early, Dermot Healy got the goal early in the game, he did a crossfield stick pass over to Jack Leahy, or Lahey, as I'd say, and just trying to force a goal situations again. So there's goals on the mind of these players.
Shane, they wanted 5 or 6 goals yesterday, didn't they? Like they every time they got the ball, they were thinking, how can we break the line? How can we force a goal opportunity? And I suppose when you have that pace and that physicality in the forward line, you're literally looking at every forward and you're thinking, he has the power, he has the pace, and he has the skill to take on his defender here and go for the throat. And they did at times. And they were like, obviously I was on the receiving end of it, but they are brilliant to watch as well. And they, when they forced those opportunities at the start of the second half, they went for the throat straight away and put the game to bed. And that was it really. Offaly fought to the end, but it was a bridge that they were never gonna be able to get over.
Yeah, Offaly are going to win it next year, though, aren't they? The under-20.
Apparently, I'm being told that Cork are even stronger next year. They'll be without Ben O'Connor. They won the minor in 2021, and apparently the crew that's coming next year is stronger again. To be honest with you, we definitely can't be counting our chickens in Offaly, because Galway will probably have a right good under-20 team next year. Kilkenny will probably have a right good under-20 team. Well, I'm only talking about Leinster first and foremost. But apparently Cork are fairly tasty for next year as well. And just on Ben O'Connor as well, the manager, he's probably made a fair play to be senior boss down the line as well. I know it's something that he's probably always wanted, in the great success with Charleville, great success with Middleton as well. And he's fairly forthright in what he feels. And look at the backroom team he had. Just off the top of my head, Ronan Kern, Anthony Nash,
Gerald Regan, Terence McCarthy.
You know what I mean? Like a bit of a kind of a who's who there. And he's probably making a bit of a play to be potentially maybe the next senior manager, whenever that is.
Yeah. Raymond Gilburn, not really sure what the context is here, but I've never dunked a biscuit in a cup of tea nor a mug of coffee. And I think it's your loss, Raymond. I'm not really sure the context, but it's definitely your loss. Catnap, lads, you always laud and applaud on the edge hurling. The on the edge, big hitting hurling is 100% the reason we see so many of these head-high tackles. Bay for blood, and you get it. It's a fair point, and I do love physical hurling. And if that's taken out of the game, it's a problem. But like, if you kind of gamble by putting your body in full steam ahead and you miss for whatever reason, you're going to have to live with the consequences. Just because a referee might not get the decision right in certain days, that doesn't mean that you're not still running the risk every time you mistime something.
Well, like, I just thought the elbow was up for that incident as well. Like, and it was listen, there's boys hopping off me in the comments here. Do I still love physical hurling? I absolutely love it. But in recent times, and I've highlighted several of them, there's been some head-high challenges that are borderline crazy. Like, and someone's going to get really badly hurt. And Conor McGeegan obviously got badly hurt yesterday, and I said I have skin in the game with Offaly, and I thought it should have been a red card. But it's something I just don't like. I just really don't. I love physicality. I love lads getting hits and stuff like that. But there's nothing physical. There's nothing physical about that. About a lad getting peeled in the head. That's not physicality. Like,
no, I'm not sure that.
You know, I mean, that's not physicality. Physicality is, getting your shoulder in, holding a lad up or whatever, stopping on his momentum. A good, tough, kind of honest play. I don't think there's anything physical about that. Now, that's not to say, like, if I was playing or you were playing, would we have? I'm not saying your man did it on purpose or anything like that either. You will do whatever you can to stop a player coming through, but I think that's different. There's a difference between that and physicality, between potentially taking the lad's head off.
Okay, well, we've got a comment coming in here from the Down hurling manager, Ronan Sheehan. So we'll just bring it up on screen here just to get his feedback. So interesting debate underway on our game with Shane and Michael about the tackling in the under-20 game. The head-high challenge is a real issue for the GAA now, but teams are effectively copying what they have seen happen at senior level and get away with it. Time for change. Like, what change can happen? Is it getting to a stage now, and obviously this can't apply across the levels, where you need a VAR type thing? Like, for example, yesterday, there's no reason that you couldn't have somebody who kind of sits in a Hawkeye type setting, in a booth, and then feeds down to the referee, hold on a second here. Obviously, the player's getting treatment, so the game stopped anyway. Look, that was a red card tackle.
Yeah,
So,
well, the umpires are right in on top of it as well, and probably need to have more response. Like it was
but
12 yards
it
out.
happened at 100 miles an hour, so it happened for 100 miles an hour for absolutely everybody there. Like you and I were up in the gantry, and you've got that beautiful view, and we're sitting down. We're not sprinting around like the referee is and getting more tired. But I thought straight away red card. You did too. Obviously, you've got your green, white, and gold glasses on to some degree. But I looked at it straight away and I thought red. But like, what's stopping the information being fed down, or is that going too far with technology?
Yeah. I suppose if there is somebody looking at something or has a better sight or something, even if they just see it in normal time, like whether it's the referee's assessor or whoever it is, they probably. I think we're going down a real dangerous area with these head high challenges. I think there's one or two in every game now at this stage, and as Roland said there, when people see it happening at senior level and lads getting away with it, like when was the last time somebody was sent off for, like we've talked about 4 or 5 head high challenges in the championship already this year, and no one's really been sent off. No one's been sent off for any of them. So if they're getting away with it at senior level, I think it probably will potentially bring in a rule change. But like rugby goes anything around the head and it's a red card. And if someone does it, they do it. And I'm not saying we're rugby or we need to copy rugby's rules, but I just think that we're going to end up with different lads having potentially life-changing consequences as a result of one of these. We're getting away with it at the moment, but we're not going to get away with it forever. And there's no point in saying any different.
Because I would have always thought, growing up and even up until recent years, that you play hurling, the risk of, like people who don't know the sport would look at it and think, oh my God, you're going to get your head taken off and all that kind of stuff. Hurley's swinging right beside you and all that. But most people know, if you haven't played and you go in, you're going to not know how to enter a tackle situation and you are going to get badly hurt. But if you know how to play, you know that the best way to avoid getting smacked by a hurley is actually, or get hurt, is actually get quite close to the player rather than staying back and sort of getting, that's when you can get whipped by the hurley in a way. There's other ways you can, of course, as well. But I think the onus has to be on the tackler, because at the moment, the vagueness of the rules means that you can burst the lad out of it. And we've seen it across the board this year. Seamus Flanagan, Grode Hegarty, the incident with Rona Maher. And I noticed yesterday when I tweeted that it should have been a red card, that I had a Cork person on to me saying, what did you say with the Rona Maher thing? And I said, well, at the time, I instantly tweeted that should be a red card. So I think I'd like to think I've been fairly consistent with this. But it probably has to get to a stage whereby the player has the onus is on them to make sure that they don't connect with the head. And it can happen that a player who's in possession miscontrols it or stumbles or something like that, and an honest attempt at a tackle which is designed to bury a lad, with a shoulder, a fair shoulder, that it becomes mistimed because the ball carrier stumbles. But again, the onus is on the player who's throwing his body at somebody 100 miles an hour, not on the guy who's in possession of the ball.
Yeah, there's two duties of care. One from the tackler to the player in possession, and I think there's a duty of care from the referee then to protect players also as well. That's my own opinion on it. There's a couple of comments in there just about Cork people, how they won't apologise for potentially bullying their way to a title, and they shouldn't. There was there are a couple of incidents that we're talking about. I don't think they might have fundamentally changed the game a small bit, but there's no doubt that Cork were the better team. They were probably the physically bigger team, probably the more skillful team as well, realistically. And it's hugely exciting from a Cork point of view, I would say. Take out, the head high challenge. That's really the only one I'm talking about. That and maybe the screeny tackle at the start. That's all. If a lad is pulled down, if Owen Downey pulls down Dan Burke and that's within the rules and there's no black card at under 20, then more luck to him. Like you're playing within the rules. You're using the rules to your effect. But the fact that they played a lot more physically, a lot more robust. It never felt like we were going to really be able to break the line because Cork were going to be there and they were going to have lads there to do whatever they needed to do. So that's definitely a good sign for the future in Cork. And like you're looking at Micheál Mullins, you're looking at Ben Cunningham, William Buckley, Jack Lahey and a couple more, and you're thinking, yeah, these boys could make an impact in the next 2 or 3 years at senior level. You'd be surprised even looking at Ben Cunningham, maybe how he wasn't playing maybe this year. And they obviously have Owen Downey. Like when you can put out Owen Downey as sweeper, like your senior star at sweeper, and I think is it the first game he played all year under 20 was the All-Ireland final. I don't know.
He was looking to be the enforcer too, wasn't he? He was going around with an attitude.
Yeah. Listen, and I'd say it was bet into them beforehand that we're not going to let these lads kind of waltz through or something like that. And to be fair to them, they didn't.
Yeah, Column Lyons Blind Spot says that you're in a tough spot, Bernie. Everything you say will be taken as sour grapes, but we all know Cork were a disgrace yesterday. On the Edge says you're either operating outside the rules or you're not, Michael. Where is the line you're talking about? Does it move where you want it to?
But I'm not sure what he means.
You're
like,
under pressure today, aren't you? People are
yeah,
coming for you.
But it's just like because they're taking Leo O'Connor's comments and thinking that that's for everybody in Offaly.
No, they've been waiting in the long grass for you for a long time because of your hatred of Cork.
I just the line is, I'd say, very, very simple. The line is a head high tackle. To be honest with you, that's the line. And once that's the far side of the line, I'd say nearly anything else is the other side of the line and within the rules. That's all.
Okay, let's talk about some of the players that are coming. That basically we want to talk about the most exciting hurling prospects for 2024. And it's, I suppose, such a disaster for Cork that Ben O'Connor has chosen rugby, and so he won't be there for St. Finbarrs, which is obviously huge, huge blow to them, and of course Cork as well. Because physically, if he wasn't playing rugby, would he have started for or featured for Cork in the senior championship this year? He probably would. And you could see his hurling lacked a little bit of sharpness at times, a couple of miscontrols because he's off playing rugby. Totally understandable. But if he was in seniors all the time or whatever, I'd imagine he'd be unbelievably sharp at the moment. But, imagine throwing him into a backline that also has the likes of Kieran Joyce really coming, the likes of Sean O'Donoghue, who's so good, Robert Downey, who's really, I think he's kicked on to another level. But he's a massive loss. But some of the players that are coming for Cork that you could imagine stepping up soon, like Ben Cunningham, that performance he gave against Clare in the Munster final, that performance he gave yesterday, 4 from play, 5 frees. And he seems to be the sort of lad who steps up when you need him to. And I think that's a real measure of the man there. He's huge, he's fast, he's skillful, and he seems to have the attitude for the big day.
Yeah, and he was been double marked at various stages of the game yesterday,
especially for puckouts.
Yeah, Dan Burke was sitting back and they were kind of double marking him. And it's funny, Offaly probably went with the idea of, if lads are going to hurt us, we're going to try and make sure that Ben Cunningham isn't the one that's doing, the greatest damage, but it probably allowed a bit of leeway for other guys that played. Maybe they still put the ball down on top of him a lot, but probably allowed maybe a bit more space for Buckley, even Rob Cremin on the edge of the square, and a few more lads maybe had a bit more. Dermot Healy as well, someone who we haven't mentioned, who was very good and got the first goal yesterday. But Cunningham, some of the scores he got, particularly in the second half and in that opening 10 minutes of the second half, were huge. And he's a big physical powerhouse as well. So yeah, he's hugely exciting. I really like Micheál Mullins now, I have to say. Even the way he hits a line ball is, he's a beautiful strike off that left hand side. He's after getting 2, outrageous goals in back-to-back games, serious pace as well. He's definitely another one that you'd have to be hugely excited about too.
From Offaly, Adam Screeney is obviously the one, but he's still only 17, and he's of age to play senior club hurling this year, but he can't play inter-county senior, so there'll be no prospect of him playing against Tipperary in a couple of weeks' time. Is he the one that you're most excited about, or who's, it'll take him a couple of years physically, you'd imagine. Maybe he'll play next year. I don't know, especially the fact that it's Joe McDonough, that might allow him to play next year a little bit more easily than getting murdered by huge lads at Liam McCarthy level. But is there anyone that you think might even be on the senior team a little bit sooner than him? I know Charlie Mitchell has already been there. He had a disappointing match, but he's already there.
Yeah, I don't think there'll be too many lads fast track, to be honest with you. And I think yesterday might be a bit of an eye opener as regards where they're at physically. If they're being dwarfed physically at under 20 level, what would it be like coming up at senior level? And I mentioned earlier about Ben O'Connor would say standing beside Screeney, and you're just thinking this is a boy and a man, but Ben O'Connor's are probably 10 a penny at the senior inter-county level. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So every player you're going to be running into, Sean Finn, cornerback, or Mike Casey, or whoever it is, they mightn't be 6'3" or anything, but they're all monsters of men as well. So I think Screeney and Co probably need to be given a good bit of time. As regards someone who's physically fairly well filled out, someone like Dan Ravenhill maybe could be one of the first maybe to make a mark at senior level. Great time for Brecon Cavan in defence, but again, he's probably a bit slighter and would probably be given a bit more time. But just back to Screeney for a second. Have you ever seen anything like it? The buzz around when he gets on a ball even. Do you know what I mean? It just, the place was just lit up anytime he got on a ball. And he's massive pace for a man that's so small. And he's able to go around tackles, absolutely no bother at all. And it's a great sidestep too. He absolutely lit up the first half. He set up the penalty. I think he won 2 or 3 frees himself. He put over a couple. He scored a couple from play. His hands were on everything good that Offaly were doing yesterday. But the Offaly ball was quite good in to negate the sweeper in the second half. They couldn't negate the sweeper at all. And basically couldn't get him on the ball. I'd say if he got on the ball twice in the second half, that was about the height of it. But as regards exciting players, yeah, he's about as exciting as it gets.
Yeah, so for Watford, they're already making a mark with Patrick and Pádraig Fitzgerald. Like, they just look like serious players. They're already oven ready. They're already out on the pitch and making a difference. And of course, Mark Fitzgerald also is another one. And Jack Toomey, or was it Jack Toomey, I think, scored that unbelievable goal for the Watford under-20s against Tip, where he's been bundled up and he was inside the square and he threw it up and backflicked it, batted it behind himself. So again, he's quite slight at the moment, but he's a player that could probably step up. Keane Byrne for Wexford. I mean, he looks like a serious prospect. You like Jeff Neary, I should say, who's a young lad in Kilkenny.
Yeah, Jeff. I think Nary. I think is how to pronounce it locally. He played for Kieran's in the colleges final earlier this year and was on the 20s with Kilkenny as well. Probably a slight enough player, but just a lovely real style. You know, you can just see lad has a bit of style. Jeff Nary has serious style, and he's probably another guy that probably will need a couple of years before maybe getting on to a senior panel. But he, to me, anyway, anything I've seen of him, he looks like he has all the tools that he could be a right good defender at senior level in maybe 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, and Kilkenny obviously have a few young lads already making a bit of an impact. Billy Drennan, Timmy Clifford and Gro Dunn have been playing. For Clare, I mean, we'll be talking about the minor, but James Hegarty, he could be the answer at centre-back whenever John Conlon retires. And of course, he's only a minor, and a 2-year minor actually at that. So it's a long way away, I suppose, him being ready. But maybe, who knows? I mean, if Kieran Joyce was able to be in the Cork team at 19, maybe 2 years from now, James Hegarty could be in there. But he looks a serious prospect, as does your man, Owen Gunning, the cornerback.
Yeah, he's some player. Actually, like, if you're playing in a team and you see this cornerback charging out to the ball, and he's such a good, he's fast, he's really fast, obviously, and really aggressive kind of player, but he reads the game really well. He actually reads the ball coming in like a forward and almost has the yard on the defense. How many times now, to be fair now, the Galway ball going in was not hectic. Now,
took the words out of my mouth.
There's no point in saying any different, but Gunning was reading it like a good forward would read the ball in. He's just walking out with ball. And
we're probably just winding up all day with the ball in, and like 3 times in the first half, the direction of the ball was so poor that it went directly out of play. And they did that again in the second half. But it kind of made it a little bit predictable, and Gunning brilliantly capitalised on it. But my God, I think Galway were the architects of their own downfall with some of that ball in and some of the overuse of the stick pass in the back line, because they got turned over so many times. It's so difficult to stick pass your way out of traffic. And it's something that they were doing in the warm-up, but they added to their own troubles there to some degree. But just back to the young players. Who do Limerick have coming? Of course, Cathal O'Neill is already there. Shane O'Brien, Adam English and Colin Coughlin. We may see them a bit more senior this year. But there are some good young players coming there as well. But I don't know, is there anyone who's like a cast iron star coming for, like the likes of Adam Screeney, the likes of, Keane Byrne? I wonder who the Limerick supporters are really kind of hanging their hat on. And please get your comments in there, because obviously we're not going to know every young player in the country, but no matter what county you're in, let us know.
Yeah, but I suppose the fact that the 3 lads you've mentioned there probably have a good bit of senior experience even now at this stage, even though they're all still kind of young men. Cathal O'Neill is obviously still young enough too, and look at, he was well touted. He started a league game in 2021 against Galway, I think, and had a hard enough all day of it. But you never need that sort of an education. Look at him now. He scored 5 points. In their penultimate game, he got the goal the last day. Look at the impact he's made at senior level, and I'm sure they're probably hoping for something similar, maybe out with Shane O'Brien, Adam English, and Colin Coughlin. From a Galway point of view, two of their best players and most well-touted players are probably Aaron Island is one of the most well-touted players in the country. Now, he had a tough enough day yesterday. He got on a bit of ball maybe in the second half when the game opened up, but from a Clare point of view, you'd have to say they shut him down big time yesterday. They shut him down big time.
I just didn't get leaving him at centre forward. Now, he wears number 15, but for the most part, he was centre forward against Clare's best player, arguably James Hegarty. And of course, the idea would be, well, Hegarty will have to sit and sweep to some degree, so maybe Nyland will be able to peel off him and get a few scores that way. But maybe just put him inside, try and find a place where he's going to get on the ball. Like, the game more or less bypassed him in an awful lot of senses. And he is class, don't get me wrong, and it's a lot of pressure on the young lad's shoulders when the whole county's, and maybe even beyond that, are talking about him. He got 2 lovely scores off his right-hand side. Someone beside me was talking about how he was a bit one-sided, but he got 2 on his right-hand side.
His left side is definitely a strong side, obviously. No more than his brother is. But now
it's so funny watching your reaction when I sort of tee you up there and try and hang you out to dry. You're waiting to get the response in.
I think there was a couple of, like, he tried to force a goal, I remember, in the first half. He's probably trying to maybe force things a bit yesterday when he did get on the ball as well. I don't know if they didn't put him inside because they didn't want Gunning going around after him. And, like, Gunning coming out with a ball was inspirational for Clare. Gunning coming out with a ball, beating Nyland to a ball would probably be even more inspirational. So maybe they were trying to avoid that or whatever, but they definitely didn't get the best out of him. Jason Rabbit obviously showed glimpses yesterday of what he can do as well. That famous kind of second name, it'd be something probably wrong if he didn't have a good paw on him, and he does have a very, very good paw. But from a Galway point of view, they'd be really disappointed that the most well-touted minor team in a long time, a team that had won all their games by double figures to this point, didn't ultimately get their hands on an All-Ireland title. And I know they said earlier on this year, Paul Bellew, the chairperson, said like that they're not interested in winning minors anymore, and it's all about development. But I'm sure when they were there, you want to be winning these titles.
Just to finish off the talk about the young players coming for 2024. I'd be excited enough from a tip point of view, the likes of Dara Stakelum and Luke Shanahan. Then there's a couple of other lads who are a bit younger again, Paddy McCormick, maybe Sean Kennelly as well from Moneygall. These are good players coming. But get your comments in and let us know who you think are the young players that are coming that could make a bit of an impact, even at under 20 level next year, maybe even minor if there's someone who you think is particularly good. But just back to the minor final yesterday, like James Hegarty, he was really good as the game wore on. And of course, you know, there was a mistake from Shane Murray when Hegarty sent in that long range free, and you know, Murray put the hand up and spilled it into the net, and that's really tough for a minor young lad. But Clare got a couple of scores after that as well, and they just pulled enough clear that Galway were always chasing the game. And there was some really good performances from some of those young lads in Clare. Thought Michael Collins was very good, Mark O'Brien, very good stuff. Ronan Kilroy, Ogie Fanning, and then the subs made a difference as well. Like Owen Begley wasn't named to start, but he won a few frees, got himself a point. Michael Power came on as well. He made an impact wearing number 15 as well. Like they were fair value for their win overall. Like they ended up with 20. What was the final score? They ended up with 24 scores to 15. I mean, that kind of says it all.
Yeah, it was 222 was the winning tally in both games. Actually, was it? Funnily enough, which is a bit mad. Yeah, like I just got in maybe 10 minutes into the first half, I'd say.
24-16, I think, in the other game. Yeah, and
Clare were the better team, you'd have to say. Like they probably nearly all the standout individual displays most of them were on the Clare side, but they also were playing far more as a team, you'd have to say too. And it's hugely exciting. Like I know obviously when they were beaten a minor 2 years ago by 40 points by Cork, like it's not the same team that's there now, but that and by all accounts from chatting lads involved in the setup and around Clare, that was a bit of a red herring. But to show that your structures are in place and that everyone's coming through the ranks as they should be, to go and win an All-Ireland minor 2 years later, having been in a Munster final last year and an All-Ireland semi-final last year, that's hugely encouraging. And Clare are on the bit of a crest of a wave at the moment, aren't they? Beaten in a Munster under-20 final by 2 points by a dominant Cork team that kind of, you'd have to say, coasted to All-Ireland under-20 success.
And to be fair, like they were well ahead against Cork, and then I felt a decision or two went against them, and Cork obviously they were excellent from there on out, but like they could easily have won that game.
Yeah, and now they're in with a chance, obviously, winning the senior Munster on Sunday, which the action at the weekend has kind of given us a couple of days grace before we talk about the monster matches this weekend. It's great that we're not kind of maybe building them up maybe a bit too far out, but like you'd have to say, yeah, Clare are in a good place right now, definitely.
Yeah, they are, of course. And I suppose Cork's Ben O'Connor going to rugby. There are plenty of other players across the board in different counties that have started out as GAA players and gone to other codes and done really well. Who sticks out for you when you think, well, first off, in Offaly?
Yeah, we've a lot of, even around Borough, we've a lot of really good rugby players. There's Mikey Millen, Peter Dooley, Jack Regan, obviously Dahi's son. They're all playing. They're all playing professional rugby. Peter's with Connacht, Jack is with Ulster, and Mikey's with Leinster. Like, and they all would have featured to some extent at club level. Mikey Millen actually played intermediate. He was actually, he won't like me saying it, he was actually famously knocked in an intermediate game. He was soloing through and he was just kind of stumbling a small bit. We were playing our neighbours, Carrick and Riverstown. I think it was Aaron Dolan, got him right on the money and knocked him. And like, if you look at him now, he could be off balance completely and you could run at him 100 miles an hour and I'd say you still wouldn't knock him. But they were three really, really good prospects, all at hurling for us, but they're all obviously gone to the oval ball, the same as Ben has. I remember, because he would be a similar age to myself, I remember seeing Shane Long in an All-Ireland vocational schools, All-Ireland, Tippy, Offaly in Burr. And I just remember him kind of lighting it up, and he obviously lit it up as a minor as well. And then you go see him playing soccer, and obviously that famous goal against Germany in Lansdowne Road that night. But you're just thinking, he looked like he had a lot of the tools to be a really, really dangerous forward. So the three lads from my own club, and definitely Shane Long would be one. But there's lots of really good examples. Like Niall Quinn played in the minor All-Ireland, didn't he, for Dublin? And even watching the Kevin Moran doc on RTE recently, the Codebreaker doc, just to see what he was doing during his career was absolutely mad. Like, you know, United let him off for the weekend. They weren't sure of the significance of the game. He comes back with a bandage on his head after getting a load of stitches and like absolutely makes ribbons of his hamstring in the game, like full blown tear, and plays on like and just limps around on the pitch and goes back over to United in bits. Like, he's probably one of the most famous ones, and just to see how he was gliding across the ground as a footballer was phenomenal to see.
Yeah, and actually, to be fair, speaking of players playing on when they had a hamstring issue, Ronan Keane, the fullback for the Clare Miners, he pulled up with a hamstring, but actually still managed to bat the ball away and out of danger. So fair play to him.
Yeah.
Comments coming in here. Marcus Lynch says Limerick have tons of guys that have chosen rugby more than anywhere. John O'Sullivan, he's talking about Cork here, and he says Darren Sweetenham and Tomás O'Leary. So Sweetenham played in the All-Ireland semi-final for Cork in 2012 against Galway. They lost 22 points to 17, but I think he was a leaving cert at the time. Obviously, he's gone on to play rugby in the meantime. Dan Goggin, a fantastic hurler, went to Munster. Tommy O'Donnell, I'm not sure what his club was, but obviously he was playing as a flanker, I'm pretty sure, for Munster. Dennis Irwin. Dan Goggin was some hurler, says Marcus Lynch. Has he played for Munster rugby? I don't really follow it, so I don't know. Waterford is a developing spot for rugby schools recently. Of course, you've Donegal Ryan. I think he did a bit of junior hurling for Ross Gray at different times. Shane Long, you've kind of mentioned him already. Seamus Coleman, I'd imagine he would have been a fair footballer for Donegal. He'd probably still be lining out for them at this stage. Zach Toohey, imagine the impact he could have made.
Hassan, is he of when you talk about lads having like unbelievable careers after switching codes, like they don't get, like Toohey's career is phenomenal. Like, he's closing in, isn't he, on Jim Steins' appearance record, I think. He obviously won the AFL medal last year as well. He's had an amazing career. Jason Sherlock would be another one. Didn't he play, wasn't there a time there where he was playing basketball and wasn't he playing League of Ireland for UCD as well while playing for the Dubs too? Like, that was fun. And for the size of him as well, to be excelling at basketball and excelling at soccer and Gaelic probably nearly at the one time was unbelievable too.
Keith Wood for Smith O'Brien's. Also, you've got Pierce Hanley, who was an underage player for Mayo. Tried to come back and play a bit of football, of course, and I think injuries got in the way. But I remember going out in 2014 to the international rules, and he was playing for Ireland. This was out in either in Perth or Melbourne, and he was asked by the Irish media, "Do you think he could come back and play Gaelic football again?" And his accent was a little bit muddled, a bit like Graham McDowell, you know, the way his accent went completely all over the shop when he moved over to America. But he started talking about I'd love to wear the Mayo jumper, which is a jumper is what they refer to as the sort of sleeveless Gansey they wear down in Australia. But he was quite a loss, really, wasn't he?
Oh God, he was. Yeah, he was a massive loss. And even, just seeing a lad like that excel in the AFL and knowing what he could have done for Mayo, maybe he could have been the missing link that would have helped get him over the line. Cathal O'Halloran mentions Daisy Hutchinson there as well, coming from professional soccer. back to hurling, like he's fairly taken to it like a duck to water, you'd have to say as well.
Alan Tynan.
Yeah, Alan Tynan as well. Seamus Power, the golfer, played for his local club. Slieve Gua, I think it's pronounced, a difficult one to pronounce. Turanina is the name of the club. Sedanto Halpin obviously played the All-Ireland in 03 when Cork were beaten, and then he went over to the AFL nearly immediately after. Mick Galway won an All-Ireland with Kerry in 86, and then obviously played with Galway. I'm thinking any more. No, Dennis Leamy, Kieran Donaghy. Obviously, still playing really, really high level Irish National League basketball as well. Still going strong at this age, which is something shocking. And Rob Carney, I think, played minor football for Louth as well when the old AIBP Louth long sleeve jerseys were on the go. And he obviously made a fairly decent career in rugby too.
Any comments on the no water breaks for the players yesterday, Porter? I'll be honest, I think this whole kind of nanny state stuff has gone way too far. Number one, we should be allowed, like, players or people coming in with water for players when there's a bit of a break in play. And obviously, it's stupid when you have the likes of, Jason Sherlock was doing it for Dublin over the years. He was coming in and he was more or less getting in the way of where goalkeepers would put kickouts and stuff like that. That should be come down on like a ton of breaks. But we should be allowed to bring water in for players. But I don't like the idea of stopping up the game for water breaks, I'll be honest with you.
No, I wouldn't be. I just think 10 or 15 seconds, a heap of water bottles onto the pitch, gone off straight away, like even at a puck out or something like that. But no, like, structured break, shall we say. Listen, as a journalist, it was great. During that minute, you were able to tap and get a load of stuff done within the minute. But as a spectator, I'm watching the game, wouldn't be a big fan of it. Just one thing I wanted to go back to. Remember when Ballygunner were kind of nearly been said that they were nearly a bit soft after Borrisalee beat them or whatever, and they went to the other extreme to some extent to get over the line. Remember against Lochmore, and there was probably some fairly cynical stuff in there. Do you think Cork will maybe do the same, if you get me, in that, you're sick of people saying whatever they're saying, whether it's no spine in defence or whether they're soft or their forwards don't tackle enough, and they'll just go the other way. They'll just be unbelievably robust. They'll be as cynical as you like, and they'll just do whatever they can to get over the line. I'd say at this stage, like, it's 19 years next year. Who knows whether they win All-Ireland next year. They could be waiting 20 years for a senior All-Ireland. I think it's going to get to the point where they will just do whatever they have to do to get over the line.
Yeah, but do they have the size profile? So, like, some of these players, like in the next couple of years, Conor Lehane, Patrick Horgan and Seamus Harnedy, who've obviously been there long spell at this stage, and all three played in the All-Ireland final in 2013, they're going to be have to be replaced one way or the other. It's just fodder time. And I don't know if the size profile is there for Cork to bring in enforcers. Like Harnedy, like he's a good physical player. I don't know if he's an enforcer. He will tackle, he will win dirty ball, all that kind of stuff. But is he the type of player that will actually, I don't know, rough people up? I don't know. Like, do they have that type of player? Kieran Joyce is going to get stuck in. I think we're going to be looking at him absolutely bursting, lads, for the next number of years. Ben O'Connor won't be there. Maybe Micheál Mullins can be a player that will physically impose himself. And the two Downies are huge men as well. Will they physically? Yeah, I suppose between those number of players we've named there, maybe they could do. But in the forward line, they need a couple of physical enforcers, because there is this kind of risk that Cork will just keep bringing through the same type of player. And like, while these players look huge at underage level, when they hit senior, are they going to be all that huge?
Yeah, I don't even know if it's about huge. I think it's maybe more of a mentality. If they have the mentality that they had yesterday, where they were going to win at all costs, I think that's potentially probably something that they need. Now, I think people are getting a bit confused here. Win at all costs, to me now, doesn't mean shoulder to the head, but all the other stuff that they did, like physicality, little bits of cynical things here and there, I don't really have any issue with that. It's just probably the real bruise and hit that, probably took a player out of the game indirectly or directly. I wouldn't be a fan of, but I think there's definitely an edge to them. And even looking at some of the subs that came on, like big bruising men that you're thinking they'd walk,
huge.
He'd walk onto any team in the country realistically at that level,
Yeah. P-Well74 says the Downies aren't physical. Well, if you watch Owen Downey yesterday, he was throwing it about. If you watched him get his suspension down in Nolan Park in the last league game, he doesn't mind throwing it about. And I think Rob Downey physically a couple of years ago, as it went to extra time against TJ Reid, he was the one throwing TJ Reid around the place. So I don't really agree there. I just think like Rob Downey was not being put in a position that suited him by putting him full back in 50 yards of space with lovely ball going in against Seamus Flanagan in an All-Ireland final. I think out in a half back line with a more compact set up team, I think he's going to excel to have a really good career for Cork there.
Yeah, no, they are physical players from everything I've seen of them anyway. And it's one of the comments there, Harry Byrne just says, Bonner matter isn't that big. Attitude probably is the one. KK boys are demons tackling the forwards and not always that big. Yeah, it's not necessarily about the size of the dog. Yeah, but like you have to have that bit of you have to probably have that bit of a dog in you. Do you know what I mean? Regardless of what size you are. Some of the most physical players that ever played the game and real enforcers have not, like Will O'Donoghue's big, but he's not 6'5". Do you know what I mean? Like 6'2", 6'3", and they're just willing to get stuck in, I think is a lot of it. And I think Cork people take great heart out of what they saw yesterday.
Yeah, so it's not the size of the dog in the fight, but the size of the fight in the dog. Like, for example, Alan Tynan, he's brought a bit of that to tip this year. Connor Stakelum has done it a bit in the last year and a half. It's not like Dan McCormick is 6'4" either. And it's these players who have been central to Tipperary turning it around somewhat in the last year or so. Okay, let's move on a little bit more. What do we want to talk about next? We have to go through the Christy Ring Cup final. That was Meath 123, Derry 121. So, I mean, great title for Meath to pick up, because was it last year that they were losing games hand over fist in the Joe McDonagh Cup? There would have been a bit of pressure on Saoirse Bulfin there, so he's delivered.
They have, yeah. They got off to a right good start. They're kind of probably hanging on at the end, but they would have been favourites to come out at Christy Ring at the start, as you say. They've got exposure at Joe McDonagh Cup level. And you know, a bit of heartbreak for Derry losing 2 finals probably in 3 years now. But Meath would have been touted as a team that would come out at Christy Ring, and in fairness to them, they did. Probably, as I said, holding on at the end. Jack Regan got 14 points from 11 of those frees. Whereas if you look at it from a Derry point of view, Cormac O'Doherty hit 114, and it was 114 from place balls. So, like, they were really, really relying on him, whereas Meath probably had a better spread of scores across the field. Wicklow had a good win in the Rackard Cup final as well. Again, they were down at half time. I think it was 2-8 to 10, and they really limited Donegal in the second half. It finished up Wicklow 120, Donegal 312. Funny enough, Donegal's top scorer was their goalkeeper, Luke White, who ended up at 1-2, 1-1 from frees and 1 point from 65. Whereas from a Wicklow side, Christy Morehouse had 9 points, 5 frees. The evergreen Andy O'Brien ended up at 1-1. Danny Staunton, Shawnee Germain and Luke Evans all chipped in with 3 points, and Big Porrick Doyle came off the bench for them. And Casey O'Brien, when he came in there, they probably had 2 goals to be competitive in the league, which they were beaten in the semi-final by Donegal, and to get back up to the Christy Ring, and they've done that. And so they'll be happy men this morning. I saw a few pictures flying around. I'm sure they had a good time over the weekend. And in the Laurie Mar Cup final, finished Monaghan 322, Lancashire 320. Lancashire were well in this game and easily could have gotten a result out of this game, but it was probably Niall Arthur and Niall Garland that were the difference. Niall Arthur, obviously from Clare originally, he got 10 points, 6 frees, and Niall Garland got 2-3 from play. That was the difference. Just a bit of a shout out. There was 3 Offaly lads playing for Lancashire. Conor Kennedy came on. My own clubmate Cormac Kenny was wing back, and Ronan Walsh from Gracefield came on off the bench as well. But they really enjoyed the experience by all accounts in Croke Park. But
Forrest Lehman playing as well. I mentioned Dan McCormick, his brother Ray McCormick was playing.
Go away. Jeez, yeah. Right, yeah. There's a fair like, it's mad. Isn't it great for lads that move away that they can still go and totally immerse themselves in a GAA community? And that's more and more now. Like, no matter where you go in the world, you will find a GAA club to go and ply your trade, and people that you will call lifelong friends probably after a couple of months.
And there's a comment coming in here. Number one, are we going to talk about the minor match? And another one has come in saying, Michael Verney got his answer yesterday. Offaly manager must stop eating jelly babies. These things happen in every game. Cork got the sum of the parts spot on.
Well, Cork were the better team yesterday. I don't think there's any doubt about that, really. To be fair, I'm not doubting that at all. Just bringing up some of the, like, listen, people can say whatever they want. Answer. Yeah, I did. Yeah, people can say whatever they want, but that was one of the big incidents that people are talking about after the game. So, are we going to discuss it and give an opinion on it? Yeah, we are. Would you prefer we didn't discuss it and made no comment on it when that's what everyone is talking about? I think you have to bring up these things and talk about them.
Actually, a question there for the likes of Adrian McGrath watching. Is Sean Arthur related to the Arthurs that played for O'Toole's in Dublin that transferred up that were underage players for Clare? Also, the talk beforehand was that the Clare half forwards, they would withdraw out, and would they be able to get enough ball up the field that they'd run and work all day, but would they be able to get the ball up inside? And that Galway were supposed to have more star forwards and all that. But if you look at it, only 2 of the starting forwards for Galway scored from play. So Jason Rabbit, he got 1-1, and Nyland ended up getting a couple of points. And that was only in the last 10 minutes that he got those ones from play. So they really struggled to score from play. Harry Holmes with an unbelievable solo and top corner goal for Galway late on. And to be fair to Cullen Killeen, his goals were unreal. In the first half, solo through, took a big heavy hit, threw the ball back on the stick and blasted it past Mark Sheedy. That was an excellent goal, and then got a nice one late on, but it was a consolation at that stage. But some of those players for Clare I thought were really good. The inside forwards, like Mark O'Brien, great target man. I thought Owen Begley did very well. Ogie Fanning, great. After Mark O'Brien had soloed through and had the patience to wait for the defender to come, popped it to Ogie Fanning, who easily could have just blasted it at the keeper. You know the way we've seen this so often. Player goes in and gets blocked down by the keeper, but he took the little step and then tapped it into an empty
that was really well done, because the keeper was ready to get a block on. He just took it was real coolness in a really pressurized situation, you'd have to say.
And like four of the Clare substitutes came on and scored from the bench as well, and a couple did for Galway too. But brilliant occasion there. Talking about the football over the weekend, Tyrone beat Armagh 13 points to 11. What did you make of the red card for Rian O'Neill? So the footage showed him sort of lean on top of the head of one of the Tyrone players, and I'm sure that his kind of point of view, he was being pulled and held down. I think manager Kieran McGeaney, he was kind of suggesting that afterwards, but it fairly much decided the game. But did you notice that at the end, that when Tyrone were trying to play a bit of keep ball, and Armagh weren't actually pressing them all that high, even though time was more or less up, they weren't actually pressing up all that hard. But Niall Morgan slipped, and it almost allowed, I'm trying to remember who the player was that nearly dispossessed him and knocked it into the back of the net, but it was one of the substitutes. It could have been an unbelievable calamity that would have given Armagh a draw at the end of the game.
It would have been catastrophic, wouldn't it? Like, yeah, Jesus. Were you surprised though, like, that Armagh weren't pressing unbelievably aggressively? Like, I couldn't believe they were. Like, the game was there, was there to get a result or push on and try and get something out of it. I just couldn't believe that they were they nearly got really, really lucky with Morgan, slipping and making a mistake. But I just couldn't believe that they didn't aggress or didn't progress or press a good bit higher and get really, really aggressive and try and force some sort of a turnover. And if they conceded at the other end, they conceded at the other end. As regards the red, it's a kind of a difficult one, really. Was he being pulled to the ground? It looked more the other way than being pulled to the ground, in my opinion, anyway.
I think he can't have too many complaints, and I just wonder, if we were able to zoom in fully, was there a bit of a dig from somebody even just before that? I'm not entirely sure if it was Rian or somebody else, but I don't know if he can have too many complaints. Fair play to Armagh for continuing to drive on. And this is only Tyrone's second championship victory since winning the All-Ireland. The other one was against Fermanagh, who you'd always be expecting to beat. But maybe this will give them the impetus to drive on this year. Derry beat Donegal also. That was 3-14 to 115, 3-11 from play. If Jason McGee had to finish that goal chance in the first half, there was a bit of a scramble when Donegal, I think it was 5 points to 4 behind. That might have made a bit of a difference. But the fact that the same player pulled up when Garrett McKinless was running through and set up the goal for Lachlan Murray, it was 3 points at that stage. It went to 6. But, talk about misfortune that a player has to pull up with an injury, which basically allows the opposition to go through and work a goal. And there's hardly better teams than Derry right now who can go through, work the ball through the hands and lead to a handy finish.
Yeah, no, that was a killer. It's an interesting question after coming in here from Colin Lyons Blind Spots. He just says, were there more hurling fans in Thurles for an underage doubleheader than all the football grounds over the weekend put together? Dead sport, dead product. Now, I would have to say that the current All-Ireland Championship does not enthuse me in any way, really, now, I have to say. Because there's not enough jeopardy, and there just seems to be an awful lot of games going on. And like, I obviously had a busy weekend with games and covering games, and you're just looking back this morning, there was some games that I didn't even realise were on over the weekend until you actually go back through them. But I think they're really saturated the football championship at this time of the year. Like, I couldn't believe it, and we get to it in a minute. There was less than 9,000 people in Nolan Park for Dublin and Kildare, which is mystifying, really. I remember being down in Nolan Park for Dublin and Laois 4 or 5 years ago, maybe, and there was the guts of about 20,000 there. Definitely 15 or 16,000. It's just mad. I think people are talking with their feet as well. You cannot get to all these games. It's so difficult to get to all these games. I think the lack of appetite from, people in attendance or whatever would definitely suggest that these structures and even the Tailteann Cup group system is not really floating a lot of people's boats, I'd say.
Yeah, but to me as well, could they not have looked at stop and repeat fixtures? Like, how many times have Derry Donegal played? How many times have Tyrone Armagh played? Why are these teams in the same groups? Dublin and Kildare only played a couple of games ago. Monaghan had 2 championship games in a row this year against Derry. So that takes a lot of the good out of it. Do you know what? I'm going to bring up some of the tables here as well. I find this very, I thought this was really good. So initially, all the tables were posted up by the GAA league tables, and I think they do a great job. And they have the round 3 fixtures there and the tables as is. And the only team that's gone at this stage is Clare with a game to go. But I thought the other really cool part was this little Aertel type mock-up from Ethan probably. I'm not sure if he did it, but really, really good. I think that's just a work of art right there.
That's like, Jesus, some memories going back to being a kid, looking up Aertel. It's amazing to think how primitive our lives were back in the day. Going to, I think soccer was 220, racing was 250, I think GA was 240. I don't know, was it 2-2-1 for late scores in soccer? When you're literally waiting to see, what's the score in Liverpool, whoever, and you're literally waiting for an update and you're pressing update. It's mad how things have moved on. But I loved Aertel back in the day, and there was always we did it. I went to study journalism over in England, and a lot of the time was to be able to write basically an Aertel, or was it CFAX is what they used to call it over in England, write a sports story within the 150 words that it allows you on that page. And it was really good because it would get your writing really tight and you were just getting to the fact. But I used to love Aertel back in the day, I have to say.
Yeah. What was the celebrity gossip? What was the page number you used to have to go for that? You'd probably know that.
God, you have me there now. You have me there. It was 200, 220, 240, 250. And then they used to have local county GA at like 560 or 570, I think, were the pages. But no, the old showbiz and all that is beyond me now. I'd say you'd be an avid reader of The Woman's Way, so I'm sure you know where all those pages were.
Actually, when I was young, we had a chipper in Burrislee, and I always remember that the mother and the aunt and stuff like that have Woman's Weekly and Hello and all these feckin' magazines, now that you mention it. Traumspieler says 220 soccer, 221 latest scores, 101 for news. I remember literally watching soccer matches on Aertel. 300 was the entertainment.
There you go. Watching a match on Aertel was like, do you remember the old kind of multi-channel? Wasn't that what it was called? Where you had the box with 12 channels, but if you didn't have Sky Sports, 5 and 6 would come up as like a shaky screen. I remember watching a whole wrestling pay-per-view on the shaky screen where you'd be able to hear every 5 seconds maybe what was going on.
I remember the last day of the Premier League in 1994-95, and I was a huge Blackburn Rovers fan at the time, and I had the jersey on.
At the time being the key word.
Oh, yeah, look, I've turned my back. I'd be the first to say it. But if they come back to Premier League and get a big Gulf State money owner, hey, I'm all back in again. But, like, I remember that the end of that game, I didn't really know what had happened because, there was the whole Blackburn against Liverpool game with that late goal that Jamie Redknapp scored.
Yeah.
What happened in not Nolan Park. What was West Ham's ground called again? Upton Park, the Bow-Lynn ground, And I remember all that happened. I wasn't sure what had happened. And because of course, you had Aertel as well, it was very hard to get updates. But I eventually found out that Blackburn won. And sorry, I didn't have the Blackburn jersey on because it was dirty. And it was sitting in the laundry basket or whatever. By God, I fished it out anyway. And walking up the town where all the Man United fans were because they were everywhere. And also, remember that famous goal that Stan Collymore got in the Newcastle 3, Liverpool 4 game?
Oh, yeah.
We had the old, the static going, but you could hear the commentary as well. No idea what had gone on because Martin Tyler was just screaming. They didn't know what happened.
Simple times. There's a lot to be said for it.
Let's see. Let's see what else. Quiz today? No, there's only quizzes on a Thursday, isn't it?
Yeah, only the Thursday. Yeah. I don't think there's too many correct answers to last week's. I might have to make it a bit easier, I'd say, to be honest with you.
Well, as Meatloaf said, 2 out of 3 ain't bad, and that's what I got.
Yeah, that's not too bad, in fairness to you.
Yeah, okay, some of the other results. Galway 20, Westmeath 12. Shane Walsh, he scored 4 points, 3 of them from frees. Peter Cook scored 4 from play. Damien Comer scored 3. Dublin 22, Kildare 38. That was a drab game. Colin Baskel, though, he was excellent. He scored 5 points. Con O'Callaghan scored 4. Dean Rock scored 4. 2 of those were frees. Sean Bugler was 3. He was very good.
Is it a bit worrying, Shane, that Dublin are kind of producing on and off a bit now? They were poor against Kildare in the Leinster semi-final. They were brilliant against Louth in the Leinster final. They were, Roscommon played well, obviously, but they were poor in that game. And then they were good again the other day. Like, if they're going to be, I still think they are probably favourites for the All-Ireland at the moment. But if they're going to go and win All-Ireland, it's going to have to be back something like the levels of the Dublin team 5 or 6 years ago, where you knew every day going out what you were going to get. Because at the moment, it's a bit hot and cold.
But that's why that Dublin team became really boring, because it was so hard to analyse any weaknesses. They almost had none. Every player was brilliant. Every player knew the game plan. It doesn't feel that it's quite that bulletproof at the moment. And I would nearly liken what happened with Dublin for a while back then, with what's happening with Man City now. Man City are on their way to a treble, but it's unbelievably boring. Like, they play good football, all that kind of stuff, but they're basically just a boa constrictor on the opposition. They completely manage the games. They just see it out constantly. It's like they're seeing it out from the first minute. They get a goal, they add another goal. The opposition is never really in it. It's not exciting. It's unbelievably. It's the most boring treble. And I hate Man United, but their treble back in 1999 was incredible.
Yeah.
This is just boring.
I have to say, this is why I find some commentary around Limerick peculiar. I don't think there's anything boring around Limerick.
No, all their games are amazing.
Yeah, that's why I find some of the commentary around them is, and even some of the bitterness around them is bemusing, really. Because if you go back and look at the vast majority of the best games of the last 5 years, I'd say Limerick have been involved in 80% of them. I suppose with the Dubs back in the day, it was the Dubs at Mayo, the Dubs in Kerry, but a lot of the other games were turkey shoots, really. I suppose what you're saying there as well does make it more interesting with Dublin. You're not 100% sure what you're going to get in a given day. There are weaknesses that can be exposed. There are areas that they're definitely not as strong in as they would have been before. And we were kind of maybe, wondering about Cluxton as well. I think this is 4 clean sheets in a row that he's kept, which isn't bad, but it's his kickouts, I suppose.
Well, what's the quality of the opposition, relative in terms of All-Ireland contenders? They're not playing All-Ireland contenders, and 2 of the 4 games are Kildare.
Stats don't lie. 4 clean sheets in a row. Hasn't conceded a goal in 320 minutes.
Stats don't lie. 222 to Cork, 313 to Offaly.
I actually, because I was sitting beside you, I actually think you had the soft spot for Offaly yesterday. And you were hoping Offaly would win.
Darragh Lahan says, Shane, stop the soccer talk, the soccer foreign game talk. Do people, mind when I bring up soccer comparisons?
I would have said most people are sports fans, not just GAA fans, even though there seems to be a bit of pop on towards Gaelic football this morning.
Yeah, and what about that Cork-Kerry game? So it was Kerry 114, Cork 15 points. And I'll just bring it up on screen here, the decisive moment. So this was the penalty for Kerry when, was it Paul Ganey that was brought down? I think he was. He was
Paddy Clifford was going through, yeah.
Sean Powter dumped him to the ground. So by the letter of the law, it is a penalty. So I don't think Cork can have too many complaints. Because the word cynical, there was a goal scoring opportunity. It doesn't have to be a clear goal scoring opportunity. It was a goal scoring opportunity. And I know there was lads coming back, but he would have got a shot away if Powter didn't pull him down.
Yeah, he probably would have got a shot away. The thing there was as well, it was listening to kind of James O'Donoghue talking about this. Sean Powter actually gave away the ball earlier in the movement. So the chances of him, when you've made a mistake and you're trying to make up for your mistake and you're trying too hard, that's kind of probably what Powter was doing there. There was always going to be a heavy likelihood that he was going to foul him. I suppose from a Cork point of view, it's just a bit sickening because if he hadn't fouled him, he might have got a shot away. He might have turned inside and got a shot away. But like, it wasn't a high percentage goal scoring chance, you'd have to say. Whereas when he fouled, then all of a sudden it was a black card and it was a penalty. Clifford started away the penalty. And the sickening thing from a Cork point of view is that's all that was between them on that day. Cork would be very disappointed. From a Kerry point of view, though, like, you'd have to say they're stuttering at the moment, big time.
And the loss of David Moore from midfield just robs him of that physical, I suppose, enforcer. And like, Stephen Sherlock had a chance at the end to blast the ball into the net, and it just went over. And obviously that would have been an equalising goal at that stage. But the decision making of Cork as the second half wore on, I remember Brian Hurley, who was a brilliant player. He had a shot from the ground for a free from the sideline, and it was never going over. That went wide. Stephen Sherlock missed another free. He's normally really, really accurate. So I don't know, how much do you look into the performances of Dublin and Kerry at the moment? Even Galway, it's like, yeah, they're sort of managing games, but they're not playing top teams at the moment. Westmeath are a good team, but look, they're not an All-Ireland challenger. Neither Sligo, of course, as well. But one thing we have to talk about here is, should scoring 2 points from outside the 45 from play, should that give you 2 points in football? Because we saw David Clifford doing it. We saw Jack McCarron with some incredible scores from distance. We saw, I think, Brendan Rodgers had a couple from distance as well. There's other players as well that can score from really far out. And with all this talk about, packed defences, and it's like, you see Oran Lynch and the other 14 outfield players for Derry just camped in opposition halves. Rather than saying you need to keep 3 players in the opposition half of the field, both teams, to open it up, maybe something a bit more organic, like anything from outside the 45 scored basically results in 2 points. So teams would be more likely to press out.
So you're saying the objective is, if you can score from outside the 45 and it's worth 2, which is obviously, only 1 less than a goal, that teams will start pulling out and making sure that you're not going to shoot from outside the 45. Because remember, that was Donegal's tactic in 12 or 14 when they beat Dublin. Remember, Connolly hit like 4 from outside the 45. I think Paul Flynn might have as well. But they were kind of happy to let them do that. And that said, McGuinness said after that, they might do it on this occasion or that occasion, but over time, the percentages are kind of in our favour. It's an amazing skill to be able to do that. And even if the ball drops short, it's probably dangerous in around the square. There's a couple of things I think need to happen in football. Number one, the attacking mark definitely needs to go. And something like this, I think you're drawing a couple of people away from the D anyway, and drawing people away from maybe having that packed defence, and you're maybe going to coach long distance kicking a good bit more, and having a couple of maybe 2 to 3 players with that in their armoury. So I definitely think, listen, we seem to be trialing everything at the moment. I think you could trial a lot worse than that.
Well, put it this way, would Colin Corkery be picked by Cork these days? Because obviously he was a burly sort of man. And these days, everyone needs to be able to run up and down constantly. Would Colin Corkery be picked in modern day football?
Probably not, no, realistically.
But now all of a sudden, would players who aren't just units and machines be picked because they're like, well, do you know what? We can sort of drop him into the pocket, pop it over from the 45. The opposition has to go to him. So we've got that skilled player back in. But also, even if the ball doesn't get to them, they're going to be drawing players away from packed defences. So that might help. I'd love to get people's opinions on this. It's only something we've kind of been discussing this morning, but it's certainly an option. Like in hurling, the idea of 2 points for a sideline is ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's absolutely ridiculous because you've got somebody stationary. They're able to practice it over and over and over under no pressure, as in under no physical pressure from an opposition. Cut it over and it's worth 2 points, whereas you could knock one over the bar under pressure from 3 or 4 players off the stick after running for 60 yards and it's still only worth 1. That's ludicrous. Just like if anyone said, 4 points for a goal in either code, you're just encouraging teams to sit back even further and say we are not conceding a goal. That's the reason teams sit back. So you're going to make it even more worthwhile to sit back. It's just
I think that, what was probably people enjoyed a lot about the 2 games yesterday, the minor and under 20 hurling, was, I don't know, there was a bit of an innocence to it almost. There was massive scores racked up. There was 5 goals in the Offaly game. There were 6 goals in the minor game. There were plenty of tactics on show on that, but it was loose enough in some respects as well, and plenty like mistakes made and kind of open enough defences at different times. Sometimes when it gets to senior level, then it's a bit too structured, and maybe it's obviously because it's so serious. That's why teams are doing everything and anything to make sure they're not cut open. There was a good comment in here about pitch invasions actually as well. Just 1 second here now and I'll get it. Someone was basically saying that, what did they think of the pitch invasions? Yeah, PWAT 9474 just says, lads, any thoughts on pitch invasion after minor? No problem with Clare fans. But why was all the Offaly fans on pitch? Anytime Clare win, Offaly just invade field. Also watched Stuart closing gates. Yeah, it was funny enough. There were Offaly people on the terrace that once the pitch invasion started, they tried to get from the terrace to the stand, basically to take a seat. So we'd always be looking for a good deal in Offaly. So if you got a terrace ticket for a couple of quid cheaper than a stand ticket and you saw an opportunity, you'd be baiting your way over towards the stand. But it was amazing. 30 minutes before throw-in of the under-20 game, the pitch was covered in people. In fairness, 7 or 8 minutes later, it was completely cleared, even though the game was delayed 10 minutes, which probably wouldn't have been any harm for a lot of Offaly supporters, because I believe there was log jams in Roscrea, Templemore, the whole way across. Even my parents had to go through Borrisolee. I told them to keep the windows up and don't stop, don't do anything in there. Just get out of there as quick as possible.
Stop off in the Bush and Briar Cafe, which is a lovely spot in Borrisolee. I'm telling you could stop in an awful lot worse places than Borrisolee. Roscommon beat Sligo 121-111. I'm really liking Roscommon at the moment. I don't know if they're an All-Ireland challenger just at the moment, but I'm really liking what they're doing right now. Do you know what? Let's bring back up on the screen the GAA league tables, and fair play to them with the work they're doing there. But just going through the different groups here. So Mayo are on top with Kerry second, Cork are also on 2 points, and Louth there in third. If Louth beat Kerry, they're out. Isn't that mad?
Yeah, that'd be some indictment on Kerry if they were knocked out in the group stages, given the lack of jeopardy. But at least the bit of jeopardy is coming into that group now. You'd have to say they're really underwhelming at the moment, and
it's because of their scoring this difference, and you'd have a 3-way tie in third. That's why they would be out.
Yeah, people have said it probably before, you say it again, but without Clifford, they're looking really, really ordinary. And there's a lot of players going to have to step up if they want to retain the Sam Maguire later this year.
Stockroom Tim says, no chance Cork would make it into a county team today, which is why I hate football. They've taken the skill out of the game. Roscommon will take out someone big, says James Sweeney. Just going through the other groups then as well. Group 2, Galway, they're on 4 points. Tyrone on 2. Armagh also on 2. And Westmeath, they're on 0. The last fixtures are going to be Galway against Armagh, Westmeath against Tyrone.
Westmeath gave Galway lots of a chance for long stages there, but probably just faded away. And they'd be absolutely disgusted with the fact that they haven't got anything on the board after running Armagh really close and giving Galway a good game for probably 45 or 50 minutes, but kind of probably looking like the writing is on the wall. Even though, the past 2 games, it suggests that they will give Tyrone a good game, but they're going to struggle probably to get points on the board now at this stage.
Yeah, Roscommon, they're top of their division. That includes Dublin. Both are on 3 points. Then Kildare and Sligo, they're also on 1 point apiece after drawing the first round. So it basically, for Kildare and Sligo, it's whoever gets beaten by the least or gets the slightly better result, I suppose. So Sligo will be hoping that they don't get absolutely murdered by Dublin here, and Kildare the same against Roscommon. And obviously there's a little bit of an extra thing going on there because Roscommon are managed by a Kildare man who will know the colour of the knickers of all of those Kildare lads, although I suppose they all have to wear white knickers so you'd be able to see them through the togs. But anyway, that's much ado about nothing. Then in Group 4, Monaghan, they're on top alongside Derry on 3 points apiece. Donegal on 2, and Clare, they're the only team out at this stage of the competition. And we haven't done one so far this year. So will we go ahead and do ourselves a little power ranking in the Gaelic football? And what we're going to do is do top 12 only, which means we're basically going to be predicting the teams that will get knocked out.
Yeah, I reckon we put a cap of maybe 6 or 7 minutes on this as well, and just see that
by midday we're done.
Yeah, we have to put our heads on the block here. What are we looking like? To me, the top 2 in the country, top 3, anything from Galway, Mayo, Dublin would be the top 3 for me at the moment.
Yeah, for me, Galway are my number 1. I think they're most likely to win the All-Ireland, even
though they haven't, really, apart from that getting to last year's All-Ireland final, they haven't won anything, if you get me. Whereas the Dubs, a lot of there's serious muscle memory in a load of these Dubs about how to actually go and win All-Irelands.
But do they look like the same Dublin? Do they look like a fading force?
Do they have to be the same Dublin though?
Well, yes, if they're going to win in All Ireland, because they haven't won it in the last couple of years. And to me now, this seems like a final roll of the dice. I feel like this is going to be Dessie Farrell's last year, because I don't think he brings back Stephen Cluxton. I don't think you bring back Mannion, bring in Pat Gilroy, McCaffrey, who's obviously injured at the moment. It feels like they've brought everyone back in for one roll of the dice for this management team. But I just don't know if they have quite enough to consistently perform and win in All Ireland. Obviously, they don't have to do that to get through the group stages, and maybe they'll peak just perfectly. But I just don't know if I can rely on them totally.
I'd probably rely on them more than I'd rely on Galway. Like outside of getting to the All Ireland final last year, they've been good this year, and they've kept the thing I really do like about them is they've kept their score. What their concession rate is really, really low. Like it's generally been 11, 12, 13 points, something like that. They've been able to keep that really low. And they've obviously added Peter Cook back into the mix and plenty of other kind of new faces where we would have probably said last year that their squad wasn't strong enough or they don't have enough options. They have lots of options. I'd agree with you on the Dubs. I think it is the last roll of the dice for a lot of them, but I would have them as All-Ireland favourites at the moment. Even what they produced against Louth in the Leinster final was... it was probably up there with some of the better performances in this year's championship by any team, or the better displays by any team. If Dublin play Galway, how does that go?
Oh, I'd go Galway all the way. No kick of a ball type stuff, but I'd have big belief in this Galway team.
Like, you'd go with Galway all the way, kick of the ball stuff.
Yeah, no, but like, I'm saying they wouldn't hammer them, but if you were to tell me put the neck on the block, I'd say Galway would win. Like, look at the physicality of this team and the size profile across the board. So I think Sean Kelly, obviously, Paul Kelly. Sorry, Sean Kelly's the fullback. He's not massive, man, but he's a physical player who can get stuck into lads. Paul Conroy's a big lad. Peter Cook's a big lad. Matthew Tierney's huge and he's in brilliant form. Johnny Heaney's really robust. Shane Walsh, Damien Comer came off the bench. John Maher, Sean Mulcairn, he's back in the mix as well. So to me, they've built more depth this year. They got to an All-Ireland final last year. I feel they're on the cusp of it. And of all the teams, how they're performing, I think they're performing really reliably. I think Cian O'Neill being part of the setup has really kind of brought them on the last year or so. Like Shane Walsh isn't in top form at the moment. I know that. But as the season goes on, and they've another warm-up game, I suppose, in their group to come, I feel like they're going to get it done this year. Like, put your neck on the block.
Oh yeah, I think the Dubs will win the All Ireland this year. Yeah,
yeah.
I've thought that from the outset, and I'd be more than happy with the Dubs number one. But I think it's probably a close run thing between the two of them. And from a Mayo point of view, it's probably good in a way that they got a result at the weekend against Louth, and it wasn't particularly great because it kind of deflates a bit of the hype around after that Kerry win. But if you look at how Kerry played against Cork, yeah, you probably wouldn't be taking that Mayo form against Kerry on face value, but they're definitely in the mix. It's great. We're talking about the high end of this power rankings as well. We have 3 Connacht teams like really in the mix. A Connacht team really needs to win the All Ireland this year, I'd say as well. And as one of the commenters said there is a potential that it could be potentially a Mayo Galway final. They are 2 of the top 3 teams in the country at the moment.
Well, look, I've taken the liberty of throwing this in. Galway number 1, Dublin number 2, Mayo 3, Kerry, the All-Ireland champions 4, Roscommon 5. But you know what? Derry deserve to be in there.
Derry definitely deserve to be in there.
What about this?
Are we been a bit? Yeah, we've probably been a bit. Are we been overly harsh on Kerry?
What have they done to make you believe this year? Like, we're talking about doing back-to-back, which, of course, they did back in, was it 06, 07, but, it's not easy done.
No, they haven't done much. They've obviously lost David Moran since. I think they have problems in midfield. I haven't seen something different that you usually need to see in a team that are trying to, retain the All-Ireland. What's been added to the mix? Can you tell me what's been added to the mix?
No.
That's worrying from a Kerry point of view, you'd have to say. Galway, Dublin. I want Dublin number 1. I'll have that on the record, but I'm okay. Galway are the second best team, if not the best team. Mayo, Derry, Kerry, Roscoe. I'm actually happy enough with that, to be honest with you. I'm actually happy enough with that. I think Derry obviously have won back-to-back Ulsters. They only drew at Monaghan first time out. Had a good result against Donegal. They did what they had to do, I'd say, against Donegal. Probably would still have Kerry just narrowly ahead of Derry. Yeah, if I'm being honest, I probably would have Kerry. That's probably why we need a third man doing this as a cast and vote, maybe.
But I think if Derry played Kerry in the championship right now, I'd be back in Derry to win that game.
Isn't that funny? Because we had Christy McKay on last year before Slough-Neil played, and he was talking about, you know, Mark and David Clifford, and it was almost like Mark and God. And now you're thinking if they play, there is actually a fair chance that they beat them in a championship game.
Yeah, I think so.
Armagh 7, Roscommon. Yeah, I'm happy enough with that so far now, I have to say. I'm happy, and apart from the couple of changes that I mentioned already. Kildare, the eternal enigma.
Sorry, I'm going to put Cork ahead of them.
Yeah, Kildare are so frustrating. Cork, yeah, as I said, the Kerry form probably hasn't worked out that well from a Mayo point of view, and maybe Cork look a lot better than they did. That maybe Cork looked a lot better against Kerry than they actually are. They've had a pretty disastrous season so far. Yeah, Tyrone would have to be ahead of Armagh. I'd probably have Monaghan ahead of Armagh as well, to be honest with you.
Okay, I'm willing to let you have your way on some of these things. No doubt about that. So Cork, Kildare, and then there's one other team which we have to decide who's getting through. Is it going to be Donegal? Because they'll probably get through. Oh, well, sure. Clare already gone, so it would have to be Donegal then. Would you put Donegal ahead of Kildare?
So who are the other teams? Donegal, Sligo, Louth.
So the teams, yeah, okay. Donegal, yeah, Louth, Westmeath, we're not including here because they're the group of Galway, Tyrone, Armagh, and they have to play Tyrone in the last game. So I'm kind of banking on Westmeath losing that game. Sligo, I'd imagine Sligo will lose by more to Dublin than Kildare. You know, I think Kildare will get a better result against Roscommon than Sligo will against Dublin. And then Clare are gone already.
Well, of all the teams that we've mentioned there, Donegal are the one team that are actually guaranteed to come through.
Who are? Donegal, yeah.
Donegal are the one team that are guaranteed to come through, in fairness. Just let me fly down through these here. Galway 1, Dublin 2, Mayo 3, Derry 4, Kerry 5, Roscommon ahead of Tyrone. Yeah, based on form this year, I'd be happy enough with that. Monaghan, always reliable. 3 points so far as well. Armagh, Cork, Kildare, Donegal. I'd be happy enough with that, you know.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, let's stick with that.
Now, like the beauty of the football when it really kicks off, you know, in 4 or 5 weeks is a lot of those could potentially be interchangeable on a given day. And that's what makes it probably the most open football championship in a long, long time.
Yeah, I'm happy enough with that. Viewers, get your comments in. Do you think we're right, wrong, somewhere in between? Let us know. But that's it for our power rankings. The first one that we've done in the year. 2 minutes late, lads. Yeah, we did go out and drag on 2 minutes, but I thought we did pretty well. Tyrone should be higher, says Patrick Coleman. Donegal over Kildare. Like Oisín Gallen, he was another player I meant to mention when I was talking about the long range score. Some of the points he got over the weekend were unreal. And if he didn't have so many injury issues coming up to now, would he have established himself as the heir apparent to Michael Murphy? And now that Patrick McBrearty is back, and Aidan O'Rourke, like he's had a fair job to try and turn that around, along with Paddy Bradley there as well. Like, are they now in a position where they can kick on? And then the other point is with Derry, Kieran Mina, he talked about them being the most documented and scrutinised team in the country, or among them. I mean, are teams starting to learn a little bit about them, or are they starting to evolve?
Well, there's lots of evidence there to go and analyse them now, isn't there? Where maybe when you're coming up through the ranks, maybe like Limerick were in the hurling, people don't get a chance to analyse you that much. Then all of a sudden you get a couple of big results, and because Derry's style is probably a good bit different than maybe a lot of the other All-Ireland contenders, people are going to go really hard at it and have a really deep dive into what you're doing. How can we stop you? How can we stifle the way that you want to play the game? So I think that's a fair enough point. But all the big teams are being looked at forensically, realistically. And, you know, that's a backhanded compliment to themselves, really, what Kieran Mina says there. When you become one of the big teams and one of the top 3 or 4 teams in the country that can actually win All-Ireland, people will look at you unbelievably closely. So it's not necessarily a bad thing either.
Yeah, Owen Hurley says Cathal O'Mahony, Sean Meehan, Conor Corbett and Kevin Flahav will add a lot to that Cork team, to be fair, especially Corbett. Darragh Lahan says Derry won't win in Croke Park, no way. Cavan wouldn't be far off 12 either. And by the way, the reason that I think Derry have come on this year is like the speed of transition of the ball through the lines, I think, is very good. Dioran Lynch, he's become better up the field as well. And he's like last year, they became shot shy against Galway in the All-Ireland semi-final. Now I think they've lads who could score from distance. Obviously, Shane McGuigan's an obvious one. Brendan Rodgers having moved up the field is a huge change for them. And there was somebody else I was going to mention also that's able to score from distance. Did I mention Paul Cassidy? Yeah, like they have players who can score from distance. We didn't mention Monaghan beating Clare as well. Jesus, Jack McCarron was unbelievable, scoring 8 points from playing another from a free, and Conor McCarthy with 1-2. But credit Clare, they're going out, but they've performed quite well here. They were ahead against Donegal, could have seen that game out. Obviously, it didn't happen for them in this game, but they pushed really hard for long spells. Tailteann Cup, then we'll just give you might give us the draw then if I call out the results. Carlow, they beat Longford 213 to 114. Wexford had a 116 to 112 win over Leitrim. Antrim saw Fermanagh 313 to 112, and then Wicklow beat Limerick 214 to 110. So do you have the fixtures there?
Yeah, preliminary quarter-final draw is Offaly against Wexford, Fermanagh against Laois, Down against Longford, and Carlow against New York. There's a couple of interesting points from the weekend. So it hasn't been a particularly good year for Tipperary, but they did finish with a win against Longford, that 1 point win. Meath obviously beaten Down 111 to 19, played in an All-Ireland final. Was it the 91 All-Ireland final? I think Down beat them in 91. That was a good win for Meath. Didn't look like a classic by all accounts. I think Down had a lot of wides. And Cara Healy was playing for London against a Laois team that he travelled over and back to from London for many, many moons. And London had themselves in a winning position there. And it was former League of Ireland goalkeeper Niall Corbett was Laois's hero as he got the late point that keeps their Tailteann Cup hopes alive as well. And Cavan had a big win. One of our viewers there was wondering whether Cavan should be in the top 12. I think that's probably a bit of a push at this stage, and they're going to have to go win the Tailteann Cup before you can consider them in that bracket. But they had a whopping win over Offaly, 225 to 2-9 at the weekend as well.
Yeah, also, one thing worth mentioning that does give a bit of excitement to the All-Ireland group stages is that second, depending on whether you get second or third, you do get home venue. And I was just thinking for Cork, if they can get a result this weekend, imagine like some of the teams that could come up against could be the likes of Donegal, could be Tyrone. Imagine having home advantage and not having to spin all the way up there. The logistics, even the cost for the county board and so on. But imagine not having to do that maybe 8-hour round trip to one of these counties that's up at the other end of the country.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, it's definitely an incentive, particularly for a county like that. If you're based around the Midlands, probably not as much. Just one thing I wanted to cover before we finish up. Davy Burke was just asked about that 6-minute play against Dublin, which has been one of the most shared 6 minutes of the championship, I say. And he just said, "Look, I suppose there's been a lot of talk about the 6-minute play last week. We didn't plan for that. We didn't keep the ball for 6 minutes in training last week and plan for that. It just kind of happens. You have to adapt and play. No one is taking the ball off you. You're going to hold it and mind the ball as much as you can and wait for the right opportunity." The right opportunity did come. We're doing a lot of that coaching, but not 6 minutes. We're not holding on to the ball for 6 minutes. I think, when a team doesn't push up on you, you kind of just hold the ball. Dublin have been doing it for years. What was brilliant about that from a Roscommon point of view, and they would have been really hammered had it not happened, was the fact that when the opening arose near the end of the 6 minutes, that they went straight through the opening. And I think it was Kieran Murta kicked the point. If that had ended up wide, they would have been absolutely hammered. There's no point in saying any different.
Yeah, and I presume you're unprepared for the usual segment at this part of the show. The goat of the week, we have no idea who it's going to be. Let's give it to Ben Cunningham for the hurling. That's going to be my and Jack McCarron for the football.
Yeah, I'm going to give it to Micheál Mullins for the hurling because I just thought he was outstanding. And I think that goal came when they probably really needed something like that if they wanted to kind of really properly kick on. The football, that's a good one. You're going to have to give me a second here. Let me think. I'm going to give it to Jack McCarron for some of his audacious efforts from out the pitch.
Yeah, I think Oisin Gallen should be in the mix as well. Just a reminder, we're brought to you by orgaretro.com. Use the promo code OurGame and you get 15% off. A reminder, we're doing club fundraisers now. Give us an email, events@ourgame.ie if you want to get more details on that. If you want to get the audio podcast, go to patreon.com/OurGame. Michael, you'll be back on Thursday unless you're a father by then.
We'll see, Shane. Things can change very, very quickly in this world.
Yeah, well, please God, it all goes well if that is the case. Right, Michael, chat to you Thursday.
Cheers,
Chat to you everyone.